And as a returning citizen, I can tell you, child support, the laws and the way that child support is structured, it's really hurt me, and it's hurt a lot of individuals. So let me just share how. When I came home, when I got out in 2004, I tried to do the right thing. I went to the child support division and told them, hey, I'm home, I want to make right, I want to do what's right by my children. However, this exorbitant amount of interest, what can we do? You know, because this interest is truly hurting me. And they told me at that time that there was nothing that they could do for me because you were incarcerated and your children still had needs. So I began to, explain to them, well, you're a third party. This is between me and the mom, and, where's this interest going? The interest isn't going to the household. It's not going to my children. They say it's going toward, the lights and the computers and all of that. It's probably the corporate trips and things of that nature. Needless to say, let's fast forward. When it came time to purchase my first home, they put that law that child support is now on your credit report. So my credit was affected because of this exorbitant child support. When I went to go purchase that vehicle, my interest rate was a whole lot higher than a lot of individuals because of that child support, because of and I'm not even gonna say it's an invisible line. It's here for dads, and this is just what it's going to be. There's no nudging, there's no budging on that instance. So, needless to say, I thank Dr. Piper and the Nehemiah Project for putting this together, and I encourage all of you out here to encourage the ones that the returning citizens, the ones who should have been here, but for whatever reason they weren't. Maybe they were afraid, they were ashamed. It's organizations like this that are trying to help, rectify the damage that has been done by the system. So thank you, Dr. Piper, for what you're doing. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. And I just want to say, so men aren't the only people that pay child support. Women can have child support orders issued against them as well. Now we are going to hear from Adrianne House. She's going to tell her consequences of incarceration, of a criminal conviction.
Hi, my name is Adrianne House. And to piggyback on Martin, when men leave to go to jail, then women do have to ask for assistance from the state. But then sometimes women get tripped up because then they're able to go back to school, do right, but then they get these welfare fraud charges put on them. So when they get the welfare fraud charges put on them, then they get these fraud cases. And in the state of Texas, anything that's $1,500 and above becomes a felony. So by the time you look up, say you frauded maybe $800, by the time the fees and everything occur, it's up to $1,500. So you have a felony case. I've always felt that the criminal justice system here is the biggest organized crime ever. Because you give these women welfare fraud cases, they pay the money back, but then when the borrowers come home, you still charge them child support for something that these women have already paid back. So that means they get paid double. The state of Texas is getting paid double. Okay, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. But I know that for a fact that it happens like that. And nobody is ever going against the state to ask them why they're able to do that. The next thing is, back in 2014 June, I was charged with an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon with intent to bodily harm. It was a domestic violence case, and because I didn't stay to call the police myself, I was the one that they came looking for. At the time, I was working for the city of San Antonio, so of course I lost my job. Now, the problem with that was, well, we can go into this all day, but you have paid public servants who do crimes, and they just go on administrative leave. But in my case, it wasn't like that because I was a convicted felon already. So I had to pay $13,750 just for the state of Texas to drop a case that should have never been put on me in the first place. But it affected everything in my life. And if it wasn't for people who knew my worth and knew what I did in the community, I wouldn't be blessed to have the job that I have today with San Antonio Fighting Back, to work with the drug courts to help people come back into society from SADC. And the struggle is hard, and it's hard for them because you have these convictions on your record. The state gives you 20 things they want you to do within 6 months. If you don't comply with them, then of course you are back incarcerated. But with people like us who want to get out here and fight and the hard work, I've been able to, I have 2 participants now. One of them was in jail for 30 years for a double homicide. One was in jail for manslaughter for killing her rapist. But I was able to get them affordable housing because they were living out of a hotel room, but the parole officer was getting ready to violate them because she felt like that was not suitable living. Even though they had a job, they were, re-entering back into society, but they still couldn't get a break. And it's hard, and I don't think people understand that. So when you leave here tonight, ask yourself, what is it that I can do? Because it affects everybody. It doesn't just affect those that are returning citizens, it doesn't affect the family. I've been blessed because I have a strong family unit, and so I have a lot of support, so I feel it's my job now to get out and support those who don't have that, because it's hard.
Thank you, Adrianne. Thank you very much. And lastly, we are going to hear from Michael Tucker. He's going to tell us about his consequences of incarceration.
Thank you, Dr. Piper. I just want to say that I'm really happy that one of the things that Mr. Keith Tony, who's running for District 2 and San Antonio City Council, is here. I really appreciate the fact that there are politicians that are taking over these situations. I appreciate the fact that Judge Pruitt is here too. Part of my story actually touches on indirectly on Judge Pruitt's situation. I'm here because, many years ago, there was and let me say this too before I move forward. Mr. Martin Henderson, I wrote a story about Mr. Martin Henderson's work in the community. And it's a shame that he would be stigmatized at all. He's been out here in the community fighting against gun violence and things of that nature, holding rallies. I went to a rally at Antioch Baptist Church, and he was there and really supporting this thing and moving this thing forward to bring the community together and stop a lot of these terrible things. I'm glad to see he's here now. But the reason I'm here is because of something that Frederick Douglass said years ago. Frederick Douglass was an escaped slave, became one of the greatest orators this nation has ever known. And he said that, when you're a slave, to be accused is to be convicted. And to be convicted is to be punished. There isn't any other alternative. And that's why I'm here, because I was falsely accused. I was falsely accused and I was incarcerated. When I was falsely accused and incarcerated, I drove to the law library with all these guys and started reading these law books. Then I ran up on a case called Mitchell versus State, 739 Southwest 2nd, page 246. And I read that case and I said, well, that's my problem right there, because that right there that ruling itself made me more susceptible to being falsely accused than any other situation around, besides the fact of my race. That's what gave the opportunity for the state to lay their hands on me and to say, Michael Tucker, we're charging you with first-degree felony of having aggravated assault against a public servant. Now, that was not true. And my action was to file a group of 42 U.S.C. 1983 lawsuits in the federal district court here. In particular, case number SA02CV0843, where I sued the state and sued the district attorney and sued the attorney general and sued the Barry County Sheriff, and I said, you need to look at that Mitchell versus State decision because there is something wrong with it. Now, one of the things wrong was the fact that one of the judges on the court that dissented to the opinion said that it wreaks havoc on the integrity of the judicial appellate system. Another judge that dissented said, this ruling gives every prosecutor in the state the right to thumb his nose at any criminal procedural statute on the books. I just recently talked to the chair of the Legal Redress Committee of the Texas State NAACP and Officer Robert Knotson. And I asked him to take a look at it, and he said that he's not a criminal defense attorney. However, on his face, the ruling itself appears to be patently unjust and legally unsupported. But that's the situation that I found myself in, because once I had been falsely accused, there was no way that I couldn't get out of it. So what they did was they waited about 19 months while the court said, I'm not going to listen to anything that you have to say, Michael Tucker, because the argument that the state has against you is too compelling. And I had not only sued the DA, I had sued the Chief Justice on the Fourth Court of Appeals, Al Malone. But they didn't want to hear anything that I had to say. But then, down underneath, back there in the background, somebody said, look, why don't you take this guy and get him out of here as soon as possible? Because he's been there too long, and you're not going to get a conviction on him because you don't have the evidence to convict him. So after 19 months, he said, well, we take him down here to the auxiliary court and said, look, I know you've been charged with an assault against a public servant. Now, there's no such thing as misdemeanor assault against a public servant in the Texas Penal Code, but what we're going to let you do, we're going to drop all 5 of these charges. It started out, it was 3 of them. So we're going to drop all 5 of these charges against you, Mr. Tucker, and what we're going to do is we're going to let you go home after 19 months. Now, you're welcome to sit here for another 5 years until you can see if the United States Supreme Court wants to hear your case. However, if you want to go home today, all you need to do is just sign to this phony charge that's called a misdemeanor assault misdemeanor aggravated assault on a public servant, and you can go home, and that's what I chose to do. Now, this is the problem. Even after they were forced to back off of the false accusation, when somebody would do a background check, when I would go and I'd apply for a job, they'd do a background check, you know what they would tell me? They said, Michael Tucker is a first-degree felony. And he's been convicted of aggravated assault, first-degree aggravated assault on a public servant, which really has a 5-year minimum incarceration. Okay. Now, there's no way that they can explain that. And the reason why I was in touch with the NAACP, because I just was informed that, hey, you know what, too much time has passed, you're not going to be able to recover any damages for it. But this is the point. The discriminatory effect of the present policies with regard to the reentry process in Bexar County transcends the demographic of those who are returning from prison to injure those who have been mistakenly or falsely charged, and those who have successfully completed contractual agreements with the state over legal issues. I had asked that Reverend Michael Hendricks, we had a felony charge way back in the 90s, who had a job one time and he had done his probation, and it was deferred adjudication where they said, okay, you do the probation, and after that you don't have any more problems. Well, he completed his probation successfully, and still they reported him as a convicted felon and he lost his job. I hope that Mike could be here this evening. The discriminatory impact is pervasive, it has longevity, it goes beyond reasonable borders in order to punish those who should not and would not be justly stigmatized. My case is an example of a situation whereby one is victimized, although he cannot be honestly be accused of getting his just deserts. The present policies need to be changed in order to offer those who leave prison an equal opportunity to succeed in society. We all should remember that every individual who pays his debt to society deserves a fair and equitable opportunity to redeem his or herself in the eyes of the community. And if we all research the history of our own lives, if we are honest, we will have to admit that no matter the evil that has been done in this world, God has yet to deny the right of repentance to any man. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. So now it's time for us to talk, converse, dialogue. There's There's a biblical scripture that says, good for eye. What are our good for moments? Let's take a few minutes to break up into groups of about 5, preferably with people that you don't know, didn't come here with, so we can really talk about and reflect on our good for moments, how these stories impact our lives, how we felt hearing these stories. What are your reactions to the stories? How do you feel about the collateral consequences of incarceration, child support arrearages, the inability to keep one's job when one's job hires people with criminal backgrounds? Oh, let's just plead this case down to a lower offense and let him go. But when we do a background check, the arrest was what it was, and you can't change that arrest despite what you pleaded to, because that's what they're getting. They're getting the arrest report. So you was arrested, and then you have this guilty plea conviction. Yeah, it appears as if you did do that. So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the collateral consequences of incarceration? Have you had similar experiences? Have your loved ones had similar experiences? Or near misses? We scraped together that money for that attorney, and had we not done that, this individual would have been in the same situation or predicament as Martin, Adrianne, and Michael. Let's talk about near misses, where just the thought of our loved one going through that process, that system, sent chills down our spines, and we did everything humanly possible to prevent that from happening. So, let's get to moving, folks. This conversation time, that's what we came here to do. We came here to talk. Let's talk about your reaction to the stories. How do you feel about the collateral consequences of incarceration? And have you had similar experiences, or your loved ones, or near misses? Take about 15 minutes to discuss.